Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Book Bites. I am coming to you tonight from the land of the Gadigal people of the Ku-ring-gai Nation, and I am so pleased to welcome Ali Lowe into the conversation. Hi Ali, lovely to have you here tonight.
Thanks for having me, Sandy.
Oh, that's okay. Congratulations on a riveting and twisty story. The Running Club, which I was just telling Ali before we went live that I finished this afternoon, and whew, what a finish it was. Before we get into our discussion tonight, Ali, which is all about humour in thrillers, which may seem like a contradiction to most people, I'm just going to pop up the details of our giveaway. For anyone who asks a question or leaves a comment either tonight during the live stream, or if you're watching this back later, we'll leave the competition open until midnight Friday. You will go into the draw to win a copy of The Running Club. And it is a signed copy because I got to catch up with Ali last week and she signed the copy for us, which is fabulous. All right, The Running Club. And our topic is, as I said, humour in thrillers, and there is a lot of humor in The Running Club. You had me laughing out loud. I can't tell you how many times. Was this a conscious decision from you to infuse such humor, or is it just the natural way that you write?
I think a bit of both, really. I did really want to have the humour in there because it's such a dark novel and it's got such, the characters aren't particularly likeable, some of them, and the story is quite twisty and dark. And obviously you're dealing with a murder. But these are people living in this kind of white picket fence world. And it's all a bit sort of, they're caricatures of themselves, really. And you can't sort of have that kind of existence without a bit of humour, I don't think. And you can't write a thriller that's so dark, I don't think, without having a bit of fun with it. Well, you can. But I just wanted to bring some light into it and just kind of, have the odd throwaway line or the odd sort of dialogue piece where the characters were having fun with each other, just to line things up. And I think that's just the natural way I am as well. I quite like to have a bit of banter with my friends, and I enjoy banter and I enjoy to laugh, and I enjoy laughing when I'm reading as well. So it was definitely quite important, and it was definitely, I did it on purpose. Hopefully it worked.
It totally worked for me. And it's not something that you see all of the time in thrillers, is it? That sense of humour running through, or not the thrillers that I've read anyway.
No, you don't. But there are, it's definitely emerging books that do have that humour in them. Like I love Richard Osman, for example. I think Richard Osman's books are brilliant. And Benjamin Stevenson's Everybody in My Family's Killed Someone. Every one of my books.
Yeah.
Such a great book, and I think people are starting to, and always have. Like if you look at Agatha Christie novels, they're, even though they're sort of they're straight up murder stories and that are brilliant, there's the odd sort of throwaway line that's from Poirot or Miss Marple that you have a giggle at, and the characters do have a bit of banter, and I think that's great, and and I love it. All for it.
You certainly, yeah. I was listening to the end of it on audiobook today so I could actually get it finished before tonight. And I was in the car with my husband and he looked over at me a couple of times because I was laughing out loud. And I got a few strange looks from him, but that's okay.
Oh, yay, I'm glad it made you laugh. Thank you.
Helen has popped in and she said she was lucky enough to win a preview copy and she loved it. And it had her from the very first page, the darkness, the mystery, the characters, and the humour. I'm going to talk about the characters in a little bit as well. M. Gray is popping in and she is currently reading it. Characters are brilliantly drawn. Yes, we will come to that. The audiobook narrators have done such a good job bringing them alive. Have you listened to any of the audio, Ali?
I listened to the voices before they actually made the audiobook to kind of check that whether I thought that they suited each character, which I did. I thought they were brilliant choices, but I haven't actually listened to it yet, so I do need to do that. But I think, as soon as the book comes out, I don't know whether it's the same with you, Sandy, but you kind of feel like, oh my goodness, I can't read. Oh, I'm too nervous to read it in case I spot something. It's probably the same with the audio as well. My cats come to say hello.
No, once it's out there and published, I don't read it again. I don't listen to it. I can't. No.
Yeah. I think eventually I'll be able to, but I think, oh gosh, what if someone says something wrong? Or I don't know, I'm a bit scared to, but I should.
Oh dear. Now, I mentioned that there were quite a few laugh out loud moments for me, and there's this particular scene that just had me in stitches the whole time, and that was the funeral scene.
Oh,
We're not giving anything away by mentioning the funeral,
we won't
because
say whose funeral it was.
no, and from the first page we know that somebody has died, so it's not a spoiler to say that there is a funeral. And it wasn't because anything physically funny happened during the funeral. It was the internal dialogue and the dialogue between the characters that just had me cracking up. Was that a fun scene to write?
Oh my goodness, there were two really fun scenes in the book, and the first one was the cheese and wine at Lottie's house. I really enjoyed writing that. It really made me sort of chuckle to myself because it reminded me of conversations I might have with my girlfriends. But the funeral is my favorite scene in the whole book. I really enjoyed writing that, and I did try and make it as kind of outrageous as I could. And really, there's a thing, you shouldn't giggle at a funeral, and all these women were sort of making such snide remarks. I kind of wanted people to giggle and kind of maybe even feel a bit like, oh no, I should be laughing at this. But yeah, there was a lot of banter, particularly from Carol. I think Carol's probably the funniest character, and she, because she is so kind of snippy and all her replies are so sarcastic. I just really kind of tried to labour that a bit so that in this kind of darkest of moments of the book, there was some kind of light relief.
But I think it is in those darkest moments where our natural state, whether that be sadness or happiness or humour, is heightened. So it felt perfectly natural that the humour really shone in that scene.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's true, actually, isn't it? Sometimes situations like that, everyone becomes a bit hysterical, and I quite like the idea of all these characters becoming a bit hysterical, and and it's actually quite funny because Carol, as I was saying, is quite the I don't know, the gag, the one that always has the gags and the sarcasm. And a friend of mine said to me quite recently, I think you based Carol on me, didn't you? And I said, no. She said, no, I'm definitely Carol. I'm definitely Carol. And she said, that bit with the candle at the funeral. And there's a bit at the funeral where Freya has lit all these candles. And Carol says, oh, it smells disgusting. They smell like toilet freshener. What is it? And Freya says, oh, it's diptyque. And Carol says, oh, they're stunning. And my friend Tanya, who thinks she's Carol, popped round with a diptyque candle in a gift bag, and it said on the words on the bag said, to the Carol that burns in all of us, love, Tanya. Carol can get away with saying some of the things that she says at the funeral. But yes, I did really enjoy writing that scene. I did have a lot of fun with it.
It was excellent. Jessica has popped in. She's looking forward to reading your book.
Oh, thank you.
Now, we've mentioned Carol, but the story is told primarily from 4 women's point of view. And all 4 of the women are funny in their own way, but they're very distinctive also.
Yeah.
In their personalities. We've got, the one who's really snarky. We've got the one who makes just keen observations of what's going on around her. And it's hard enough to write 4 distinctive points of view in a novel. How do you do it so well while also putting in humour? Because humour is such a subjective thing.
Yeah, gosh, I don't. Thank you for saying I've managed to do it well. Thanks for I think I think Lottie is quite a serious character. So Lottie was quite sort of, she's a Stepford wife. She's worried about getting everything perfect. She gets quite anxious. She's a bit of a worrywart. So she was the hardest to have any humor. So I think I found the humor in her response to, in her response to Carol, really, and the way Carol speaks to her and how she sort of responds in a bit of a flap. And I guess that was how I tried to make Lottie's character humorous, but she was quite hard. Freya's quite sarcastic, so she was quite a bit easier. Carol is so kind of caustic. She says exactly what she feels and it's always outrageous. So I suppose the humor in her was a little bit easier. And Shelby is Lottie's twin sister, who is very arrogant and conceited and very, very beautiful. And her humor, I suppose, came from the odd one-liner. So I think in the scene, the cheese and wine scene, Carol and Lottie don't really get on. There's a lot of competition. In the cheese and wine scene, Carol says something like, "Oh, I can't ever eat a peanut because I'm severely allergic," and Shelby basically mutters, "Oh, satay, anyone?" So her humor was very dry and very sort of, very said in an aside out the side of her mouth, basically, whereas Carol's is very outspoken and Lottie's is very much like what. So I guess I just had to try and kind of cater for each of their personalities, and perhaps some of the humor in some of it comes from the way they observe each other rather than the dialogue as well.
Yeah, there's lots of keen observations in there. And earlier today, Emma Gray, who I had on last week, she and I were messaging about the running club. And we were both talking about how fabulous your characterization is. And those of us in the industry, or anyone who's done a writing course, will have heard the phrase show not to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, that is where you don't tell your readers about somebody, you show them. So you don't say Sandy was a snarky cow. You show through Sandy's actions, reactions, and interactions that she's a snarky cow. And one of the best examples of that I have ever seen is in the Harry Potter series, and it's where Hermione is having a go at Ron and Harry, and she says, "You'll get us all killed, or worse, expelled." That tells you everything you need to know about Hermione, right? Without telling us. You do this so fabulously in your books. You don't ever describe your characters, but we know them inside out. So A, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind.
And B, did you have a favourite character to write out of those four main points of view?
I did. So Carol was probably my favourite in terms of I let myself go a bit nuts with the rudeness, because I think I was saying this at my book launch, and Sandy, you were there, that oh no, we weren't, but you probably heard me say this before, that Carol was I just love, I'm quite a mild-mannered person, I think, and to be able to write a sort of character who is so snarky and so rude and says exactly what she thinks is just so pleasant. It's almost like letting a side to you go that you don't let go, and sometimes, if I'm really angry about something, I'll kind of fume internally. But with Carol, it was a really kind of, I can put whatever down on the page that this woman is thinking, and that's really liberating. I quite liked it, that. But for a non sort of kind of comedy point of view, I really enjoyed writing Shelby's chapters, because Shelby's chapters are set in the 1990s in Australia, and where the whole book is set, obviously. But I grew up in the UK, so for me to go back in time to 90s Australia was really interesting, really exciting, because I had no clue. I mean, I knew what number ones there were in the UK and what music I was listening to, like Backstreet Boys, and what films were on, but I didn't know what was number one here. And so that was quite fun, investigating all of that. And I had to message one of my best friends and say, "Hey, how did you pick up your HSC results? Did you get them from the post office? Did you get them in the post?" And it was quite funny, because she said to me, "I don't actually remember. I'll have to ask one of my friends." So she went to ask one of her friends. So it was just quite an interesting learning curve, and going back and seeing what films Shelby and Max might have seen at the cinema in the 90s, and, and what the name of the cinema might be. And I think I actually made up the name of the cinema in the end, because I couldn't be sure, and I didn't want to get it wrong. And I do that quite a lot, so have sort of fictional places. So yeah, I think Shelby was fun to write, and that early romance, her early years with Max, were really fun to write, and to kind of go back to the years and think about what we were all doing when we were teenagers, and probably sneaking off to the dunes to have a bonfire and maybe drink a sneaky beer and all this kind of stuff. Was really fun to kind of revisit.
I'm just going to hijack something you said there, and I'm getting the sense that you were living vicariously through Carol. Is this correct?
Yeah, a bit.
What things you want to say that you can't?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm just going to let rip with these women. I did really enjoy that. I just really enjoy writing a character that basically says exactly what they think. And it was just fun. I just liked her, and I know she was really unlikable, but I felt a warmth to her. And I think that, you think about Carol's snarkiness and why she's so awful. And you think yes, she does have everything she could kind of possibly want materially, but she's desperately insecure. You know, it's not a spoiler to say that at the beginning of the book, she's very concerned about her marriage to Max, because she absolutely adores him and she's always quite insecure about it. And you know, and you kind of feel for her in some ways, or I did anyway. Perhaps I feel sorry for nasty people, I don't know, but she definitely had some redeeming qualities, and definitely towards the sort of midpoint in the book, you sort of realize that actually she's quite a loyal person. And you know, there are a couple of things that she does towards the end of the book, and you think, oh well, maybe you are pretty evil in some ways, or pretty bad in some ways, but you know, somewhere underneath there's a bit of goodness, whether it comes out or not, you know.
It's interesting that you say that, because my favorite character switched as I was reading.
Interesting.
Yeah. And some of it I can't explain here because it would be a spoiler. But Carol is one of the ones that did switch for me. Whereas, you know, at first I was like, oh, I don't like this woman. I loved her by the end of the story. I absolutely loved Carol. So.
Oh, that's good to know, because I did as well, and I kind of wanted the reader to, and I kind of wanted to, you know, I wanted everyone to persevere with her, because I know at the beginning, you know, it's easy to read a chapter and think, oh, these women are awful, but I wanted there to be snippets and people to want to go along her journey, because I kind of felt like if they did, they might be rewarded with a bit more sort of substance than you get at the beginning. Well, I hope anyway.
Absolutely. Helen has dropped in a line that the characters all feel so real. She feels like we probably all know someone who is like each one of them.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like my friends stepping forward and saying, I think you based Lottie on me, or I think you based Carol on me. I think, you know, that we've all got traits of these. You know, I've probably got traits of all of them. You know, you know, I think we probably all have, but I think I've never really based a character on anyone in particular, but I do kind of think of sort of types of people, or people that I've met in the past, and, you know, or even characters I've seen on TV. You know, you get your inspiration everywhere, or people I've read about in the news, and just certain character traits you kind of take, don't you? And you kind of, you mix them, jumble them all up until you've created this kind of, you know, complex character, and, you know, hopefully it works on the page.
Yeah, I call it cherry picking, that you cherry pick different traits from people and make them into one.
Yeah, exactly.
We've just got a hello from Karen. Hi, Karen. Thank you for joining us. And a hello from Jodie. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, hi,
Jodie. Down in Victoria there she is. Now, the Running Club has the pace of a thriller, and it keeps the reader guessing. You and I were chatting about this off camera, and again, we won't bring it up on camera, but you keep the reader guessing as to who done it. But it's balanced so artfully with the humour. Were there times where you did not get that balance right and you found yourself being too funny in what is supposed to be a thriller?
I think maybe in scenes like the funeral scene and the cheese and wine, I think I seem to remember kind of making the dialogue go on a bit for the sake of having humorous bits. And I know that the funeral scene was cut back a bit. And I think that's probably because I was, you know, trying to get the old Babumtish stuff in a bit too much. But I did really feel like, you know, those bits are the kind of the funny bits. And then there's another scene at Carol's house when she has everyone round towards the end of the book, when she's got her whiteboard. You'll know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
That was supposed to be another kind of sort of light-hearted scene, and I really enjoyed writing that as well. And I kind of thought if I space them out in the book, you know, it's going to, you know, if I put them all together, it would be a bit strange, but because I tried to space them out, and so it wasn't too sort of like, you know, ha at any one point. It was kind of spread out, but also I couldn't insert humor in the parts of the novel that were really serious. So, you know, for example, some of the backstory to me seemed more serious, and I didn't really want to have, you know, the kind of, I don't know, irreverent humor in those bits, because some of those were kind of quite meaningful scenes between some of these people when they were at high school. And there's one scene on the beach involving Shelby, which is supposed to be quite sort of moving, and it's definitely quite serious scene. So definitely that wouldn't have been appropriate for the humor. And you know, and there's a wake and there's a funeral, and one of them's quite fun and one of them's quite serious. So you know, I didn't want to sort of go over the top and make this a comedy, but I also didn't want it to be really, really sort of dark. Oh my goodness, this is so depressing and everyone hates each other and they're all so awful. You know, I think I was allowed to make them all so awful because I brought the humor in, if that makes sense. You know, I allowed myself to make these people so awful because, you know, they were so awful, they were a bit silly, if that makes sense.
It does make perfect sense, because on the surface, these are women that, you know, you're wondering, why are they even friends? Because they don't actually like each other all that much. But yeah, you balance that out with the humor. And as a reader, I certainly appreciated that. I'm always in awe of authors who inject a lot of humor into their books, because humor is, as I mentioned, so subjective. Did you know that you were hitting the right notes with the humor, or is that where your editor or beta readers came in?
Oh, thank you. Well, I just I guess I just went for what I found funny. And you kind of have to hope that there's a pocket of people out there who have the same sense of humor as you. And I think, you know, I've got that. I do love sarcasm. I love sarcasm. It's my favorite. And I love a pun. And my sense of humor is a bit silly, and my husband describes my sense of humor in this book, The Running Club, and in the Trivia Night, as being sort of my humor on steroids. So it's kind of just dialed up a notch. But yeah, I did enjoy the silliness of some of the, you know, the things these women say, and a lot of it is kind of, you know, almost mirror image of some of the drinks nights or the cheese and wine nights I've had with my girlfriend. So in the beginning, the first cheese and wine scene, there's a discussion about hot dead guys, you know, like Henry VIII. Oh, he's quite hot, you know, and they're talking about, it's such a silly discussion, but I'm sure that came from one of my cheese and wine nights. And you know, and just things that kind of spark memory, things that kind of get me and make me kind of go, you know, that's what I try to do. I guess I tried to make myself laugh and just hope that it would strike a chord with someone. But then I remember listening to Benjamin Stevenson talking once and saying that, you know, when you write your own jokes in a book, you often find them funny the first time, but then by the 7th time you've read it, you think, oh, is that funny or not? I can't even work out whether it's funny or not. And I think it's the same with me. I read back in a proof stage and you think, it's actually working or not, but you know, it's gone through your agent, it's gone through your publisher, and you know, you hope you've hit the nail on the head, but you never know.
I'm thinking you and I are going to have a cheese and wine night, because I think we might share the same sense of humor. Because yeah. We've got a few questions here that have come through. First one from Belinda. Did you know who done it when you began writing?
Did I know who done it? No, I didn't. No, at all. In fact, I didn't know until probably about, I don't know, maybe just after halfway. And I remember saying to my husband, who do you think did it? I mean, who did it? And these are my scenarios. I know, did he do it because of this? Did she do it because of this? And I listed everyone, and he was like, no, I don't think that person, no, I don't think. And we went through it, and he's very good at plotting, my husband. So he kind of helped me, you know, work it out in my head until I came up with the ultimate person who did it, the perpetrator. But no, I didn't. And I remember listening to Michael Robotham at the Sydney Writers' Festival saying that he doesn't plan his books, and the sheer reason that, you know, if you don't know what's going to happen in your own book, then the reader won't either. And if you don't know who did it, then in the process of writing, you're going to make everyone else a credible suspect. So that's kind of the best advice, I think. Well, it wasn't really advice as much as permission, you know, like Michael Robotham doing that, and you're kind of thinking, oh, well, actually, if he does it, then, you know, I'm going to give it a go. Why not? If the king of the thrillers does it. But it is a really good way to do it, because, you know, you kind of start writing and you actually give everyone a motive. And so by the time you get to the end, everyone's got a motive to kill this person. And you know, it's, I guess in that respect, you kind of, you know, make everyone credible, and you don't give it away to yourself or them or the reader.
You absolutely did, because I was going, oh, I think it's so-and-so. Oh, no, hang on. I think it might be so-and-so. And I did kind of narrow it down to 2 in the end. And I won't tell the listeners
You were right, Sandy.
whether I was right or not. But it did keep me guessing for quite a while. Once you did figure out who was going to do it, or who did do it, did you then have to go back in and sprinkle some more elements and change some things?
Yeah, I think I went in and did some more red herrings and kind of, you know, I had to do tweaks and just make sure that everything was, you know, there were some people that I'd made really obvious suspects just in case I chose them. So I had to go down and, you know, maybe soften them a bit, but not soften them too much, because you wanted people to kind of think that, oh, I've got it. Oh, no, I haven't. And, oh, I've got it. No, they did it. And then, oh, maybe they didn't, you know, and that was my intention, was to try and make it a bit confusing, and then try and make there, you know, there'd be quite a big surprise at the end. And actually, I was saying this to someone the other day, that one of my favorite books that I've read, or a book I read ages ago, probably about 20 years ago now, was Anita Shreve's book, The Last Time They Met. And it's not a comedy, and it's not a thriller, but it's a story that has the most gigantic plot twist right at the end, like in I think it's the last chapter. And I remember reading it as a sort of, you know, early 20s or late teens, whatever, and just going, oh my God, at the end, just what? And just being absolutely gobsmacked, and going back and reading that chapter again, and just literally walking around the house, my parents' house. And I can remember finishing that book and kind of with my mouth open going, what? And, you know, so I've always been like, I've always been quite keen to do that in my own books, and have a bit of a twist, and to mix it up a bit at the end. And you know, if you don't know who your perpetrator is, you've kind of got a bit more, I don't know, maybe you've got a bit more license to do it. I don't know.
I've read a few Anita Shreve's books. Is that the one where it's told in reverse time order?
It's called The Last Time They Met. Yeah. It's a fabulous book. Tanya Farrelly has dropped in. Hi, Tanya. Thank you for joining us. She would like to know which authors have inspired or influenced your writing style over the years. Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, my favorite book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, because that's like the ultimate thriller. But I think I have always read Agatha Christie novels, always. So my parents had shelves and shelves of them. We had all of them when I was growing up, and they were like my staples. I just went back and back and back and read those books as a teenager again and again, and watched the VHS movies and the Marples and the Poirots. And if I was ever home from school, I'd watch one of those. And, you know, so I think that's kind of, you know, that must have stuck in my head, because I seem to veer towards these kind of affluent people bumping each other off in the same kind of style. But not that I'm comparing myself to Agatha Christie, but, you know, just you know, I love that kind of style, that kind of almost locked room mystery where you just don't know who did it. Contemporary writers, I love Richard Osman. I devoured his books, all three. Just love him. I love Sally Hepworth's books, Leon Moriarty. Burr Carroll's books I love. I think she's a brilliant thriller author. Adele Parks, thrillers. Love Anna Dowd. You know, but particularly the ones with comedy. I love Jess Detman's books. And they're not thrillers, but she is just hilarious. Karina May, hilarious. So it's somewhere between loving sort of thrillers and loving comedy, and especially thrillers that do have the element of comedy, like you know, Richard Osman, Benjamin Stevenson.
Fantastic. Karen has a question here. There seems to be a lot of books these days where each character has a chapter. Is that a trend, or is it just coincidence?
I mean, I don't know what you think, Sandy, but I think it is a bit of a trend. And we're actually talking about this last night with Jo Nell, and we were saying that audiobooks, you know, when you have an audiobook with multiple characters, you know, you've obviously got different voices. And we were saying, oh, is that because there are more, you know, chapters, you know, more books with chapters with multiple voices? And yeah, I think maybe it is. It does seem to be, maybe it is a new thing. But then I remember reading, you know, books when I was a teenager, you know, with a few different women narrating. So maybe it's not. I don't know. What do you think, Sandy?
I think it's relatively new. When I first started out, and my first book was published in 2018, so it's not that long ago. I remember doing courses beforehand, and they were like, "Oh no, you shouldn't be writing in multiple points of view as a debut author." And I was, but that's just the way that I wrote. So I think it certainly was then not as common as it is now. And I think it's just that we've given ourselves permission to do that, because you look at trends, the way a Jane Austen novel was written, the way an Agatha Christie novel was written, the way that we write now, it changes over time. It changes as writers change, as readers change, and I think we just have permission. And maybe it's a trickle down effect from romance, because romance do boy-girl chapters
maybe
all the time, and they've been doing that for a long time. So maybe we just feel now we have permission to do that in other genres. I don't know.
Yeah. But I remember reading, was it The Hunting Party, one of Lucy Foley's, with multiple characters. What was the second one? I can't remember the name of the second one, which was really good. The Guest List, really good. And that was a lot of characters. And that, I think, was more than I'd read in a lot of books. And that was just brilliant. She does it so well. And I think it is a great device for carrying on a story. Multiple voices in first person is a great way of telling the story. So I guess it's, maybe it is a trend, but it's a good one. I mean, I like reading that way as well. And I think also our attention spans have got shorter, haven't they, generally? Yeah. So, I read a lot of comments where people say about various authors, oh, I love the fact she's got short chapters, and I love the fact they're in different voices. And I think maybe it's because we like to, have things quite quick and quite disposable. And I know I do, because we're quite time poor, aren't we? So, sometimes it's quite an enjoyable way to read a book.
Yeah, I think so. I think tastes just changed over time. Jodie has a question. Did your writing process change from the Trivia Night, which was your debut, to the Running Club, which is the current one? And she did correct her grammar there, just in case.
No. Thanks, Jodie. Yeah, I think it did. I think really I was more confident when I was writing the Running Club, because I felt like, not that I felt like I knew what I was doing, because I don't think you ever know what you're doing. I certainly don't. But I just kind of, I think, had a lot more confidence, so I kind of felt a bit like, yeah, it's okay. I think I've got this, I think I can do it. And I wrote in quite a linear fashion. And whereas in the Trivia Night, I remember on the writing course I was doing, we would do sort of a scene here, a scene there, and then you kind of link them all like chains of a necklace, and eventually you'd have a book. But with the Running Club, I wrote from start to finish, occasionally going back if I missed, if I was in a rush, or if I was writing two of Carol's scenes and they were quite important back to back, I'd kind of write them together and then fit the other ones in. But mainly I wrote in quite a linear fashion, and I think I found that a lot easier. And also I gave myself permission to, in the Trivia Night, I remember agonizing over chapter 1 and spending hours and hours and hours, and probably days and days, trying to perfect this first chapter, which then got binned at the edit stage anyway. So, and I think with the Running Club, I kind of said, right, let's just get the bones of this story done. And if the first chapter is really terrible, I'll go back at the end. It doesn't matter. Just get your story on paper. And I did. And it was really hard for me, because I am a bit of a perfectionist. You can probably see by my very color coordinated bookcase that, it was really hard not to kind of go back and go, okay, let's get this perfect before moving on. But I did let myself go. And I think it was a better, a better process for it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a valuable lesson there for any people who are just starting out on their writing journey. To just get the story down. And there's a famous quote, and you just epitomized it then, and I can't remember who said it, and I've tried to look it up and I can't find out who said it. It is, you can't write your first chapter until you've written your last.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And the fact that you had to bin your first chapter, and I've binned probably 3 out of the 5 of my first chapters have not made it into the book.
It's
and funny. It's for that very reason. Yeah.
And it's just because you write that first chapter and it's very much in your own head to set the scene, isn't it? And sometimes that scene changes sort of midway into the book, or even a couple of chapters in, you realize you're going down the wrong pathway. And so there you go. First chapters don't always get kept.
And Tanya agrees. Tanya's just handed in her second book to her publisher, I believe, from inside information that I have. Emma Babington has a question for you. As a Brit writer living in Australia, what do you love about setting your books here? And would you ever set one in the UK?
Oh gosh, hi Emma. I don't know. I would set one in the UK, yeah. But I just love the kind of beachside setting. That Darley Heights, which is my made-up community, in Trivia Night, and Esperance, which was in the running club. I just really like having them by the beach and having the sort of sun and the heat. And I kind of feel like the beach and the sea has so much opportunity. Like in Esperance, there's the sand dunes where people get up to no good, and there's the beach barbecues they have, and the beach bonfires, and there's the treachery of the waves. And there's one scene where Carol is like storming along at night against the ocean, and it's the waves are kind of ravaging and she's angry, and I just feel like it's so atmospheric. Whereas maybe if you said it somewhere in the UK and it was a bit drab and rainy, it might not have the same effect on Brighton Beach as it does in some sort of sun-kissed suburb. But I'm allowed to say that because I'm a pom, and Emma's a pom as well. Yeah, I would. I quite like a kind of split book, so maybe a voice in the UK and a voice in Australia, so I definitely think about doing that at some point. Yeah, who knows.
Excellent. Darlene has a comment. Her first chapter turned into chapter 2. Yeah, exactly, Darlene. Until we get to the end, we don't quite know how it's all gonna play out. Kate has left a comment which will lead into my next question. She's looking forward to your new novel. My next question is, what's up after this one?
So there are 2 more novels coming. I've just done the structural edits for the 3rd novel, which is what I can tell you is it's set in a high school, and it involves 3 women who are very, very desperate for their sons to be to go very far in this elite high school, and the sense of the competition that they have to get their sons a place ends up in someone being killed. That's what I can say.
Karen was just asking at the same time you were answering it, do you have an idea for book 3? So yeah, yes, you do. In fact, it's written. So.
It's written, and it's been through its first round of edits, and a second round coming up, and then it will be being made into a book.
And just so you know, Karen, we tend to work a year in advance. So book 3, which will come out around about this time next year, we have to have it done now. So that's why we already know what's going to happen. Emma says that the new book sounds juicy. I'm going to pop up the details of where you can find Ali online. So if you've got any last minute questions, pop them in now, because we will be wrapping this up. So this is where we can find Ali hanging out online. I have to ask you, Ali, are you part of a running club?
No, I'm not. My husband's a massive runner. In fact, he's going off to do a massive marathon in Morocco in April. But no, I am not. I stick to body pump at the gym, and that's about it. I probably should go for a run, but yeah, no, I'm a bit of a fair weather gym goer.
And are your friends at the gym like the friends, I use the term loosely, in the running club?
No, they're all really nice.
You have to say that.
The lady who runs the class that I go to, she stood at the front of the class the other day, and she said, right, do we have anyone in the room who's pregnant? Do we have anyone in the room who's got any injuries? Do we have any authors in the room? And I was like, no.
Any authors? Why was she asking about authors?
Well, because she wanted to give the running club a plug. She was very sweet. She was like, oh, we've got one over there, and pointed at me. And I was like, oh, thank you, Joss. It was very sweet.
Yes. My mind went down a completely different road then. I thought you were going to say she asked if there were any authors in the room because she wanted you out so you couldn't disclose any of their secrets.
Oh, no. She was just doing me a solid one, I think.
Oh, nice. Kelly is here tonight, and she says, congratulations, Ali, on the new book.
Oh, thank you, Kelly.
Tanya said, thanks, ladies. Great chat. Ali, thank you so much for joining us here on Book Bites tonight. I wish you all the very best with the running club. And I can say to you, if you're not normally a thriller reader, and I am not. This is a new genre. Crime and thriller is a new genre for me, and it's because of all the friendships that I've made within the writing community. I think this is a fabulous book to start, because even if you're not a thriller reader, this is just brilliant. And I think you should go out and get it tomorrow or right now online if you're so inclined. So
oh, thank you so much, Sandy. It's so lovely to chat.
As always, it's been a pleasure, Ali. Thanks, everybody. And don't forget, if you are watching this back a little bit later and not during the live, if you do have any questions for Ali or myself, pop them into the comments, and I will pop in over the next couple of days. And if there's something there that I see, I'll let Ali know and she can pop in and answer it in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us, Ali, and we'll see you next time on Book Bites.
Thank you, Sandy. Bye. Thanks, everyone.